Hey there, welcome to your very own deep dive. Today we're kind of stepping into this world where, algorithms are like brushes and data, it transforms into these dazzling visuals. We're talking generative art.
Yeah, we're going on a journey through, well, the surprisingly long history of generative art. Get ready for, some chance encounters with musical dice games, rebellious artists armed with algorithms, and maybe even like a sneak peek into the future of art itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I've got to say, when I think generative art, my mind goes straight to like AI and computers. But are you saying this goes like way back?
Way back. Think 1757. Johann Kernberger, he's a composer, creates the musical dice game. Picture this. You're rolling dice, but not for snake eyes, right? You're rolling to figure out the sequence of these pre-composed musical phrases.
So every time you play, you get a different piece of music.
Exactly.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing for like the 1700s. What's the big idea here?
It kind of shows this deep-rooted, I think, human fascination with chance and order in art,
Hmm.
right? Even back then, they were playing with this idea of controlled randomness, where systems and chance kind of collaborate to create something new and unexpected.
It's like our brains are like wired to find beauty in both the predictable, right? But then also the unpredictable. But this wasn't just some quirky experiment, right? I'm seeing like echoes of this dice game in much later music.
Exactly. Think of Bach's fugues with their like intricate mathematically driven
Yeah.
structures, or even like the structured randomness of serial music. Kernberger's musical dice game, it wasn't just a novelty. It was tapping into a fundamental aspect of musical creativity, something that, continues to resonate today.
Wow, you're right. Okay, so we've got this fascination with chance and order going back centuries. But things really start to like heat up in the 20th century.
Oh, yeah. That's where art and technology really start to like tango and things get really interesting. We see these early computer art pioneers,
Mm.
causing a stir with this 1965 exhibition. Some say it was the first ever generative art exhibition.
Oh, wow.
Imagine computers creating art like Jorg Nies and Frieder Nake were doing in the 60s.
I bet that ruffled some feathers. But it wasn't all about computers, right? Didn't someone use chance in, like, painting?
Absolutely. Ellsworth Kelly, he was a master of vibrant colors and bold forms. He incorporated chance into his creative process.
Oh, so.
He used what are called chance operations to decide, for example, the placement of colors in his, iconic grid-based paintings.
So he's introducing this element of unpredictability, but it's within a very controlled system, right?
Yes.
That tension, that's got to be where the magic happens, right?
Precisely. And this interplay of control and randomness, this push and pull between the artist's intention, right, and the unexpected outcomes, it's a recurring theme. We see it throughout the history of generative art.
It's like those flip books where you think you know what image is coming next, but then, surprise. Speaking of surprises, I'm particularly intrigued by Vera Molnar.
She's incredible, a true pioneer, especially considering she was a woman navigating a very, male-dominated art world.
Mm.
And she was one of the first artists to really embrace computers as a tool for artistic expression.
That takes guts and vision. So she's got these computers in her studio. What's she doing with them?
She's creating art that explores geometric forms, patterns, and algorithms. But what's really fascinating is how she used the computer not just to create the artwork, but to explore an almost infinite number of variations. Imagine each click generating a new iteration, each with its own unique qualities.
It's like she's like collaborating with the computer, exploring these like uncharted territories of creativity. So we've got computers spitting out art, painters leaving things to chance. Where do we go from here?
Well, there's an artist who takes this idea of systems to a whole other level, Hans Hag.
Hmm.
He's not just thinking about like visual systems, but also social and political ones.
No, that's what I call art with a message. How did that play out in his work?
One of his most famous pieces is Condensation Cube, this simple plexiglass box filled with water. Seems straightforward, but the real artwork is the process of condensation forming inside the cube, constantly changing based on the surrounding environment.
Okay.
It becomes a metaphor for how external forces, even ones we don't always see, can shape our world.
Okay, that is way deeper than your average sculpture. It makes you think about like all these invisible systems all around us, right? The cause and effect constantly at play.
Exactly. Hack's work reminds us that art can be a powerful tool for social commentary, for making us question assumptions, and for revealing the hidden connections in our world.
He turned something as simple as condensation into a powerful statement. Speaking of powerful visuals, we can't forget Francois Morellet. I'm always mesmerized by his, like, intricate patterns, especially those moire patterns.
Morellet was a master of optical illusion, using simple geometric shapes to create a sense of movement and depth. Moire patterns, they're created by layering those simple grids on top of each other, slightly offset.
Like those times when you accidentally layer two striped shirts and you get that weird, like, wavy effect.
Exactly. But Morellet takes this simple visual phenomenon and turns it into these stunning and complex compositions. They really play with your perception. It's like he's revealing the hidden patterns within the seemingly mundane.
I can practically hear my brain trying to, like, make sense of those patterns. Morellet aside, I'm also really curious about this generative systems department at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. What was happening over there?
So in 1970, they established a department dedicated to, like, this new wave of art making. It's like they could sense the seismic shift technology was bringing to the art world. A central figure there was Sonia Landy Sheridan.
Sheridan's work is fascinating. She embraced everything from, photography to copy machines to explore new forms of artistic expression. I read she even predicted the rise of 3D printing.
She was ahead of her time, that's for sure. What she recognized was that these new technologies weren't just tools. They were collaborators in the creative process, pushing artists to think differently about what art could be.
Yeah, and as we move, deeper into the late 20th century, computers become more than just tools, right? They evolve into, like, creative partners. They're blurring the lines between artist and machine, like Pygmalion. But instead of a statue coming to life, it's lines of code, right? Transforming into art. Harold Cohen kind of explored this evolving relationship.
Exactly. Cohen developed Aaron, which was a system that combined artificial intelligence and robotics. So picture a robotic arm guided by AI creating paintings.
Okay, so now that's just cool. I'm picturing like this robotic arm with a paintbrush going wild on a canvas. Was Aaron just like following Cohen's like instructions, or was there more to it?
See, that's the fascinating part.
Yeah.
Cohen saw Aaron as like a collaborator.
Yeah.
So he programmed it, right, with rules, with parameters. But within those constraints, Aaron can make its own choices about composition, color, form.
So there's this element of unpredictability, even for Cohen, right? He sets the stage, but then the AI is like improvising. That must have been both exciting and maybe a little unnerving, right, for an artist.
Absolutely. And it challenged the very definition of authorship. Like, who's the artist here? Cohen, the AI, both. These are questions, we're still grappling with today, especially with the rise of these even more sophisticated AI art generators.
It's kind of making my head spin a bit in a good way. So we've got robots making art. What's next? Did someone like teach a plant to paint?
Not quite painting, but John Max Albert comes close. His Calmodulin Monument project involved translating a plant's responses to stimuli, things like light, wind, even touch into colors and shape.
Wait, so the plant is like literally driving the creation of the artwork. That's like next level collaboration. How does that even work?
So he hooked up sensors to the plant to kind of measure its electrical activity, in response to those stimuli, right? Then those signals were translated in real time into visual representations projected onto a large scale.
Wow.
It was like giving the plant a voice,
Yeah.
allowing it to express itself through art.
That's incredible. It's like he found a way to like tap into the hidden language of nature. It reminds me of those like stunning time-lapse videos of flowers blooming, you know what I mean? Seeing that hidden world come to life, it's just magical. Okay, so plants are getting in on the action, but generative art isn't always about like physical forms, right? There's that whole world of data visualization too.
Absolutely. And that's where someone like Mark Napier comes in. He was one of the pioneers of using data as like an artistic medium. His Carnivore project is a great example. He took some invisible internet traffic data and turned it into this dynamic, evolving visual map.
It's like those visualizations of global air traffic patterns, right? You suddenly see these intricate networks that are always there, but usually hidden from view.
Precisely. Napier's work revealed the hidden structures and patterns in this vast sea of data, right? Data that we create every single day. He helped us see the internet, something we often think of as like intangible, as a physical, almost living entity.
It reminds us that even in this like digital age, we're surrounded by systems and structures that influence our lives in really profound ways. It's like that saying, data is the new oil. It's all around us, but we need people like Napier to like refine it, right?
Yeah.
To make it meaningful, to help us understand its value.
And speaking of finding meaning in unexpected places, let's talk about Martin Wattenberg. He took data visualization in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
He was transforming complex data sets like musical scores, Wikipedia edit histories, even the human genome into these like beautiful, almost poetic visual narratives.
I've always loved those visualizations of music that show the melody as a kind of like landscape. Are those kind of similar to what Wattenberg was doing?
Very much so. He called his project The Shape of Song. And it did exactly that. It turned musical compositions into these like flowing organic forms that revealed the rhythm, the harmony, the very essence of the music.
It's like he found a way to make music visible. I imagine his visualization of Wikipedia edits is like watching like history being written in real time, right? With all those edits and revisions forming this ever-evolving tapestry of knowledge.
Exactly. His work wasn't just about making data pretty, right? It was about using visualization to tell stories, to reveal hidden connections, to make complex information more accessible, more engaging.
It's giving me a whole new appreciation for data.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From chance-driven music to robot artists, even plants that can paint. It's clear that as technology evolves, so too does the art that it inspires. So what happens as we move into the 21st century? Does generative art become like more about the digital and less about the physical?
It's not so much a shift away from the physical as it is an expansion into new territories, right? Artists are still exploring those connections between the digital and the physical, but now they have even more tools at their disposal.
So the digital becomes like a bridge connecting the virtual and the real.
Exactly. Where do you even draw the line between art, technology, and science in these cases? It's all so intertwined.
And that blurring of boundaries is a hallmark of generative art, especially as we move into the 21st century. Artists like Ronaldo and groups like the Algorists, they're pushing these limits even further.
Algorithms. That sounds like a group of like superheroes with algorithms as their superpowers. What's their story?
They champion this idea of algorithms themselves being a form of artistic expression. They saw the beauty and creativity in the code in the process of designing these systems that could generate unique and often unpredictable results.
So it's not just about what the computer like spits out, right? It's about the artistry involved in writing that code, in creating the rules that govern the creative process. It's like appreciating the craftsmanship of a master watchmaker, even if you can't see all the intricate gears at work.
Exactly. Two prominent members of the Algorists were Jean-Pierre Hebert and Roman Verosco, and they exemplified this approach. They dedicated their careers to exploring the creative potential of algorithms, often using pen plotters to put their digital creations into the physical world.
A pen plotter. Now that's dedication. Those machines are like the dinosaurs of the computer world. It's like they deliberately chose a tool that forced them to like slow down, to appreciate the process, the line-by-line creation of the artwork.
It's like choosing to write a novel on a typewriter instead of a laptop. There's a certain intentionality there, a commitment to the craft. And speaking of pioneers who embrace the beauty of process, we have to talk about A. Michael Knoll.
I've heard whispers about Knoll. He was creating computer art way back in the early 60s, right? What made his work so groundbreaking?
In 1962, long before most people even knew what a computer was, Knoll was already using mathematical equations in early computer programs to generate visual art. Imagine, in 1962, feeding punch cards into a massive mainframe computer and getting, like, abstract art as a result. It was revolutionary.
It's like he had a time machine. He was decades ahead of his time. I bet people didn't know what to make of his work back then.
You're right. It was a completely new way of thinking about art. He wasn't just using the computer as a tool to replicate traditional forms. He was exploring the unique visual language that computers made possible.
A new visual language. That's a great way to put it. It's like those early photographers who had to convince the world that photographs weren't just cheap imitations of paintings, but an art form in their own right.
It's true. The push and pull between these new technologies and traditional art forms, it's like a story as old as art itself.
Yeah.
But you were asking about A. Michael Knoll. You know who else was a visionary? Celestino Sodù. In 1987, he had this wild idea to create artificial DNA for Italian medieval towns.
Hold on. Artificial DNA for towns. What does that even mean? It sounds like something out of like a sci-fi novel. It's like he's creating like digital clones of these towns.
It's not that far off. He basically wrote code, this artificial DNA, that kind of captured the architectural essence of these towns, the proportions, the styles, the way buildings relate to each other. Then, using this code, he could generate countless 3D models, each one unique, yet like unmistakably Italian medieval town.
So it's like he found a way to like bottle the architectural DNA of these places and then use that to create variations on a theme. It's like those breeding games where you combine different creatures to create new ones, but instead of fantastical beasts, he's making like digital towns.
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
And it speaks to that desire not just to recreate what already exists, right?
Yeah.
But to explore the potential, the what ifs, the almost infinite variations that become possible when you combine human creativity with computational power.
It makes you wonder, where else can we apply this? Like generative thinking. What about literature? Can algorithms write poetry?
You're absolutely on the right track. Generative literature has its own, like, fascinating history. Before computers, writers were already experimenting with chance and randomness. Think about Tristan Tzara, Brian Geisen, William Burroughs using the cut-up method.
That up method. Okay, I need a quick like crash course. What is that?
Imagine taking a perfectly good text, like a newspaper article, cutting it into pieces, and then rearranging those pieces randomly. It's like a literary collage, right? Creating unexpected juxtapositions and meanings.
It's like shaking a snow globe of words and seeing what new patterns emerge. So, how does this translate to like the digital age? Do we have algorithms churning out like Shakespearean sonnets?
Not quite Shakespeare, but we do have algorithms writing some pretty amazing poetry. Jackson McClough was a pioneer in this.
Yeah.
He used computer programs to generate poems based on chance operations and linguistic constraints.
So it's not just like random gibberish. There's an underlying structure, right? A set of rules that guide the creative process. It's like composing music, but instead of notes, you're arranging words.
Exactly. And then there's Philip M. Parker, who took this idea to, like, its extreme. He was creating software designed to generate entire books automatically.
Okay, now that's both impressive and a little terrifying. It's like that saying, the robots are coming for our jobs. But in this case, it's the writers who should be looking over their shoulders. Did people, like, embrace this new wave of computer-generated literature?
It was met with, a mix of excitement and skepticism, as you can imagine. Some saw it as like a threat to human creativity, right?
Yeah.
While others embraced it as a new tool, a way to push the boundaries of language and explore new forms of expression. Take Jason Nelson, for example. He used speech-to-text software to create poems from various audio sources.
So he's feeding the algorithm, like everything, movie dialogue, political speeches, and seeing what, like, poetic gems emerge. It's like he's using technology to uncover the hidden poetry in, like, everyday language.
Exactly. And that brings us to, like, the latest chapter in the story of generative art, the rise of artificial intelligence. Remember those AI image generators everyone's talking about? That's generative art in action.
Okay, those AI image generators are seriously blowing my mind. The idea that you can type in a few words like a robot painting a portrait of a cat in the style of Frida Kahlo and get a like unique artwork in seconds, it's just wild.
A whole new world of creative possibilities, but it also raises a lot of questions, right? Then you have these AI models like Stable Diffusion, which can generate incredibly realistic and stylistically diverse images with, like, minimal human input.
It's amazing, but it also makes you wonder, who's the real artist here, right? Is it the person who wrote the code, the person who wrote the like prompt, or the AI itself?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and they're at the heart of the debate surrounding AI and art. But, like, beyond the philosophical questions, there's a whole new wave of generative art platforms emerging that are blurring those lines even further.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've journeyed through the history of art, from musical dice games to AI-powered masterpieces. What's the biggest takeaway here?
Generative art isn't just about technology. It's about human creativity finding new forms of expression. It's about chance encounters, unexpected outcomes, and pushing the boundaries of what art can be.
It's like we're hardwired to explore, to experiment, to play with the very fabric of creativity. And as technology continues to evolve, who knows what, like mind-blowing art forms await us just around the corner. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of generative art. Be sure to check out our show notes for links to all the artists and resources we mentioned. And for more mind-expanding content, subscribe to Daniel David Allen's YouTube channel. Until next time, keep exploring.